Hello, hi viewers. Welcome to Beyond Academics. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Varshapal, and welcome to Research Series. I have a very interesting topic with me, that is questionnaire design and scale development. Come, let's have a look. Questionnaire. What, according to you, is a questionnaire? So you have a formalized set of questions. Obviously, is to attain the information from whom? From respondents. So this questions, when I say these questions can be sometimes mostly specific, especially pertaining to your study, right? Why a questionnaire is important? Why a questionnaire is important? The first one, it is the form where you collect primary or secondary data. It's primary data. And it's a standardized way in which the data is internally consistent and coherent, especially with your analysis. So if, for example, if you have interviews, they're using different questions, different wordings. So you can see this is a standard way of collecting data. So basically, when I say standard way, it means standardization. And you can also do comparability of the data across the interviewers. So which is going to give you obviously with standardization and comparability, you're going to get speed and accuracy of reading and facilitating the main thing, that is the data processing. First step in questionnaire or in questionnaire design is collection of information, right? So what sort of information do you normally get or do you establish in? So basically the information that I really want. So I have already told you one of my essays revolved around migrant workers. So I did frame a questionnaire and went for primary data. So I wanted to know the occupational health and safety of migrant workers. So that's the information. It's like the broader information that I really wanted. So and in that I would have framed from some 12, 15 questions to be very precise about what actually I'm looking for. So that is what I'm saying. What sort of information are you looking for? So it has to match to your research question. And so it has to be very specific, not a general view. I just gave you an idea about my research topic. Yes. And it should be also targeted. The questionnaire should be framed with two things in mind. I told you, one is information. That too, you have to be very specific of what kind of information are you looking into. Second, you have to also keep in mind, main thing is respondents. How can they understand the question, or how can they comprehend? So it has to be simple, common layman's terms. Sometimes the language, the mode of communication that you're really looking for and getting the question also matters, because migrant workers, I cannot approach to them in English, right? They don't understand the language. So according to their native language, it's like Hindi or whatever your research setting is, if it's in Malayalam or Tamil. So accordingly, you have to frame your question. So that's what I'm saying. You have to always keep in mind the respondents. How do they look at your questions or a set of your questions? It should be simple as well. All right. Yes. Go with the second one. How the questions should be framed. First, you have to always ask, is this questions necessary for your understanding? And don't ask several questions, because it's kind of monotonous and they may feel very bored. But at the same time, you should ask a lot of probing questions. So I have seen few questionnaires run for pages. Please don't do that. Be very specific and precise with your questionnaires. And the main thing, as I told you earlier, are the respondents able to answer or able to comprehend to your questions? which is very important. As I said, should be simple. They should be able to understand what you're talking about. And you should also be in a position to explain. And the main other thing is respondents sometimes they're not willing to answer the question. So you have to make sure there are the respondents willing to answer your question. That is also important because they may feel it's a personal, so they may not like income. So it's always better to put it in brackets and slabs and then give you the options. So not all questions they might be ready to answer. So annual income. So some personal questions, make sure that it's given and it's asked in a very what to say common layman's term, and making sure that they don't get offended also. The question first is, you must have heard this unstructured question. What is unstructured question? They are open-ended questions that you answer in your own words. You can call this as free answer, or you can say it as another word slash as free response. So they, as I said, they're first questions on a topic. So you generally get the respondents to express it like in a general attitudes and opinions, which helps them to go with the structured questions. And so when I say general attitudes, they're able to express it in the original forms, what the beliefs, attitude I have towards a particular, say, a particular product. So this unstructured questions, generally it's used in exploratory research. It's used in exploratory research. So its advantage of unstructured questions is first is errors while recording data when you enter the data, that is especially coding of the data. And sometimes when I say this is a personal or a telephonic interview that you conduct, what happens is the recording becomes an issue, the recording skills. So for example, it can be through word of mouth. So that's one another reason, because it depends exactly on the recordings skills of the interviewer. And sometimes what happens is there is going to be an interviewer bias, which cannot be totally neglected because it's through verbatim. So we don't know how far it's right or not. And so when I say open-ended questions, so these are opening questions. So for example, this is okay with a small kind of research, but the same thing if you're doing a large survey, then there's a complexity of tabulation, recording, and analysis also. So this is why disadvantage of unstructured questions. This, when there is unstructured, obviously there is going to be structured questions. So when I say structured questions, it's well understood there's going to be a definite format. There's going to be a format of how the question is framed, and there's going to be multiple choices and scales. And when I say multiple choice questions, what comes into your mind? Obviously, I'm going to give you options, say 5. So for example, willing to travel anywhere in the next 1 year, maybe definitely will not travel, probably will not travel, or undecided, or probably will travel, or definitely will travel. So I've given you five choices. So according to this is called multiple choice alternatives, where the number of alternatives that it should be included, and there is making sure there is order is in correct sequence. So when I say multiple choice questions, what comes, I told, just give you an example. Obviously, there's going to be choices, which covers the full range of all the alternatives that you have in mind. And when I say alternatives, it has to be mutually exclusive. And so that is very important. Easy for the respondents to answer because it's easy for them to tabulate and understand the open-ended questions. And main thing, the bias is also reduced, unlike um, unstructured questions. Commonly used, you must be knowing Likert scale, which is it's from 5 to 7. And so usually it starts with the strongly disagree to strongly agree. So you can give your degree of agreement by clicking the responses. So this is something which is very common, and I think most of you must be knowing about it. And if you read papers, you will understand. So the higher score denotes a favorable attitude. So higher score gives you more favorable attitude. And what happens is a respondent will just usually give the score that is the highest according to the attitude. So then goes with the highest score. So the Likert scale has a lot of advantages because you are able to construct and administer the scale, and it's easy for the respondent to understand the question. So how do Likert scale these days? We have open survey, and there are a lot of tools also where you can send the questionnaires through online, and it makes its ease. Only few studies, few questionnaires you have to go to the field and then understand it. So for example, I told you my study, like migrant workers, I cannot send them the questionnaires, right? I have to go personal, get get the respondent's response, and then for the same thing, I can send it online because few things, like few questions, like for example, if you want to know about what is the health and safety of migrant workers, understanding from the contractors who work, from the managers who work, from construction companies, and online works, I can send them through personal note or emails and all that. But that's what I said. Few things you have to go to the field and understand. Like consumer behavior, you want to understand about consumer behavior of a certain product. You can just do it online. You can float the questionnaires online. So yeah, so that's what I meant here. Okay. On what basis the decision is taken? First is the number of scale categories. Number of scale categories, when I say that, you cannot have more than few categories. So generally, it has to be 7 plus or minus 2, or between 5 and 9. But still, it's better to go for the optimal. There is no single optimal number of categories. The next one is another decision which is based on Likert scale is one is balanced versus unbalanced scale. So here, if you see the favorable and the unfavorable categories is generally equal. So in an unbalanced case, it's unequal, as I said. Balanced, it's equal. So my if the distribution, say in the responses, is likely to be skewed, say positive or negative, and if an unbalanced scale, if it's like the direction of skewness sometimes may be appropriate. So when I use unbalanced scale, so make sure that they're being taken into account in the data analysis. Next is odd or even number of categories. So for in this, that middle scale position is generally considered as neutral or impartial. So okay, how do you use the odd and even one? It depends on the responses of how it's being measured. So based on it, you understand or you choose the odd and even number of categories. forced and non-forced scales. So here, what happens is the respondents are generally they're given an option which is known as the no option, which is being provided. So here, in this case, that if the respondents they don't want to express or convey the particular question, they don't want to do it. So they may mark what happens middle scale position. So that's why we go for forced and non-forced scales. Should the question be worded? That's very important. I have already told you how should the question be worded? Very important. So first one, you have to make sure. So why the question should be worded properly? Because proper misguided questions can actually mislead the respondents. So you may get non-response or response error, and this is called as non-response error. And if you're not able to if you're not able to capture the respondents' queries or respondents answer responses especially, then it can lead to response error, and then it's very difficult to proceed with your study. So first one, to make sure that you avoid the problems in the questioning in the question wordings, the first one that you have to do is to define the issue. You have to define the issue. So when I say issue, that the questions, whatever that you are doing, has to be properly addressed. So who, when, where, why, the way, the six W's here matter. The six W's here matter. What are the six W's? I just told you: who, what, when, where, why, and the way. Okay, I think I'll write it down so that it's easier for you to understand. Who, what, when, where, why, way is very important. And so this will give you a clearer idea of what exactly you're looking for, what exactly your question is. Already told you, use simple words. I have already explained, don't use complicated words. Make sure that it's very easier for them to understand. And words like so sometimes same word might have a different meaning. So for example, usually, normally, frequently, often, these words so how I interpret may not be the respondent be looking at the same word. So be very careful that the response bias doesn't happen. So that is another thing. And then and I told you earlier, uh, you ask probing questions, you ask leading questions. So make sure that sometimes what happens, most of them can give you this called as no answer. So it's your responsibility to understand and get the right answer from the respondents. So the words and can actually lead to your the direction that you are being looking at. So that you make it in common layman's terms so that they can understand. Stop using big words like jargons, phrases which people cannot comprehend with. So this I've explained in the previous, in the beginning of the video. Still, you can just give a thought about it. So first I told you, you get the information which is needed. So you are targeting, you're getting the specific amount of information. And the main thing, you have to have a clear idea about your target population that you're looking for. And always I told you, you have to make sure, you have to keep asking yourself whether this question is necessary, and do not use double-barreled questions again and again. Asking the same question would bore them, so don't do that. And in unambiguous manner also, please don't ask. Use very simple English. so that they can understand. And the main thing, you have to understand whether the information that you are looking is sensitive to the study, and whether they're able to understand the cues that you're giving to whether they're able to understand the cues that you're able to, whether they're able to comprehend, or they're able to articulate what you're looking at. And choosing the question structure, which is very important. Choosing the question, whether structure, whether they're open-ended, or whether using structured questions or unstructured questions, or whether you are getting like same responses again and again. So and be very careful when you use multiple choice questions also. Explained just now, using of unambiguous words. Make sure it's simple, make sure it's interesting. And one more thing I forgot, the basic information should be obtained first. Should be obtained first. And before all that, ethics approval, that is a consent, you have to get from the respondents. So if you want me to do a video about it, you can just write it on the comment section. So before you do a questionnaire, it's very important to go for the ethical form or ethical consent, which is very, very, very important. So a few respondents, they may not want to disclose their name. That's what I said on the time, that personal details. So that's why the ethics is approval is very needed. The consent is very, very much needed. And so after determining the order of questions, pre-testing is always, always important. So you got to test all the aspects of the questionnaire, stays from question content, from the wording. So generally, I will tell you what I have done. So basically, I did a pilot study. So when I say a pilot study question, is where the target is like so 25 or 10, it depends on your work. So generally, you can always get the idea of experts. When I say experts, experts working in your field. Okay, it can be your seniors, your academicians, your guide, and you can send them the questionnaires and ask them to have a look. Always a third eye will give you a much more idea about how a questionnaire should be framed. So if you're not going for a standardized questionnaire, this is how it works. I understand. I hope that this video was useful and productive, and still we can talk about it. You can always message me in LinkedIn, and I'm always ready for the please join for the mentorship program. And if you have any questions, we can have 1 to 2 hour session through Zoom, and I can clarify all your queries and clarifications. So I hope this video was useful. Please like and subscribe my channel. I'll come back with the next another beautiful episode in Beyond Academics. Bye.